Yes. Okay, it is 5:30, so I'm going to call our regularly scheduled Shawnee Mission School District Board of Education meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, so if we can all please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our next action will be to adopt the agenda, but first I need to seek a motion to amend the agenda because we are removing item 6.12 under the consent agenda due to a contract issue that has just arose. So if I can get a motion to amend our agenda to remove item 6.12 in a second, that would be great.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Goodburn. Is there a second?
Second, Hembry.
Thank you, Ms. Hembry. All those in favor to amend the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
And so now we will move to adopt the amended agenda, item 1.3. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. Is there a second?
Second, Goodburn.
Thank you, Ms. Goodburn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our regular meeting on March 22nd. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Goodburn.
Thank you, Ms. Goodburn. Is there a second?
Second, Hembry.
Thank you, Ms. Hembry. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Item 1.5, approval of minutes from our special meeting on April 12th. Seek a motion to approve.
Move approval, Sinclair.
Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. Is there a second?
So moved, Hembry.
Thank you, Ms. Boardman. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And then approval of the minutes, item 1.6 from our board workshop meeting, April 12th.
So moved, Goodburn.
Thank you, Ms. Goodburn. Is there a second?
Second, Hembry.
Thank you, Ms. Hembry. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The next item on our agenda is our opportunity for public comment, which occurs the 30 minutes prior to each meeting between 5:30 and 6 p.m. No one has signed up for public comment this evening, so we will be in recess until 6 p.m. when we re-adjourn and have the superintendent report. Thank you. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We will reconvene, and I will turn it over to Dr. Fulton for his superintendent report.
Okay, thank you very much. It's great to see everybody this evening. Thank you for being here. I want to start off with recognizing Bianca Musselman. Bianca is a Shawnee Mission West senior and animation signature program student who earned several top recognitions at the Imagine Media Festival. This contest is the only one of its kind for high school students in the Midwest. Musselman placed second in character animation, third in animated story, and third in music video. Musselman is planning to pursue animation next year in college and hopes to eventually animate for a studio. She graduates this May with a robust portfolio of animation work, and we congratulate her on all of her accomplishments. The Hucker Grove 8th grader, Hannah Lank, won the middle school division of the Kansas World Language Association poster contest. The Spanish 2 student created an original digital design for the competition. The contest asked students to create artwork depicting the 2021 Kansas World Language Association conference theme, One World, Many Voices. Congratulations to Hannah. Benjamin Phillips, who's a junior at Shawnee Mission West, earned a perfect score on the ACT exam. Phillips plans to attend college and is considering pursuing a degree in physics. Less than 0.1% of all ACT test takers earn a perfect composite score on the ACT exam. Congratulations to Benjamin on his amazing accomplishment. The Greater Kansas City Committee of the Princeton Prize in Race Relations is honoring 3 students from the Shawnee Mission School District. These students are being honored for their work to advance racial equity and understanding in the Kansas City community. The honorees are Samantha Morinville and Ora Oni, both juniors at Shawnee Mission North, and Lalan Hamid, who is a Shawnee Mission West senior. Morinville and Ani are members of the Executive Committee of Shawnee Mission North's Coalition of Racial Equity. They also have created a college advising program to extend CORE's reach to middle school students and help them be successful in multiple facets of life. Hamid is honored for her work to push diversity, equity, and inclusion in school curriculum and create spaces for students to have conversations about cultures in her school and abroad. And we want to thank these students for all that they have done to promote diversity, equity, inclusion in our community, and we're thrilled to hear about this prestigious recognition. Riley Atkinson, who is a senior at Shawnee Mission East, is the 2021 Journalism Education Association Journalist of the Year, making her the top student journalist in the country. If you remember her name, it may be because she was also named the Kansas Student Journalist of the Year in February by the Kansas Scholastic Press Association. Atkinson is copy editor and online co-editor for the Shawnee Mission East student newspaper. As a top winner, she earned a $3,000 scholarship. So we're very proud of Riley for this national recognition. Congratulations to her. The Shawnee Mission Education Foundation invites you to a special event celebrating the accomplishments of our 2021 seniors. The Distinguished Leaders Speaker Series, Senior Portraits, will feature seniors in their own words, inspiring us with their stories of strength, hope, and resilience, as well as advice for younger students. The community is invited to join the virtual audience for the Distinguished Leaders Speaker Series, which is a free virtual event at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, April 29th, this week. Viewers can also watch on demand, and we'll have a place where you can click for a reservation should you like to join in on that when we send out tonight's summary. We also want to invite all of you to watch the R&D Forum. That's one of our biggest student showcases of the year. On May 1st, 2021 is when that's going to be held. This marks the 59th year for the forum, which will include a virtual student showcase and a live stream pitch finals competition called The Next Great Idea. This competition is presented in partnership with community partners at Startland. Participants will be competing for cash awards to help make their dreams a reality, and the community is invited to view the student showcases and watch and vote in the Next Great Idea Pitch competition on May 1st. Links to watch will be posted on smsd.org and on the district's Facebook and Twitter accounts. The entire R&D Forum is made possible through the generous support of the Rainier family, and their longstanding support of this district-wide event is deeply appreciated. Well, we are very excited tonight to present a very special recognition. This recognition is for a group of people who have been absolutely vital to keeping SMSD strong this year and ensuring that we can continue our mission to educate all of our students. With that, I would like to invite Dr. Christy Ziegler up to help get started. Dr. Ziegler.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Dr. Fulton. I am extremely honored to help recognize the Shawnee Mission School District Health Services team and Shelby Rebeck, Health Services Director, tonight. From even before the pandemic was formally declared more than a year ago, this team has been instrumental in all of our mitigation, collaboration, vaccination, and education efforts. They have helped every student and staff member in our community by providing critical medical information, partnering with our local public health officials, volunteering to support the county hotline through the closures and the summer months, and performing contact tracing while carrying out the essential duties of their positions. Our health services team members were there for all of us as we worked to reopen our schools in a new environment through implementing a testing program, and as we partnered to help administer over 15,000 vaccinations to educators in this county with our great partners in our Johnson County Department of Health and Environment and also Children's Mercy Hospital. And just last week, I'm proud to say that we were able to vaccinate again with our partners 600 students in our high schools. These are significantly huge accomplishments that have ripple effects throughout our learning community as well as our county. We also know our health services team members have been a primary point person for staff and family members in our schools, providing answers, a listening ear, advice, compassion, and care. All of this is done on top of the typical day-to-day health-related tasks that they would address in serving students in a year without a pandemic. It's not at all an overstatement to say they are true lifesavers. Another aspect for which we are grateful is the partnership that I just spoke of a minute ago, and we have in our Johnson County Department of Health and Environment. We've invited Elizabeth Holshoe, Director of Epidemiology, to be with us tonight to share a few words of recognition as well. Elizabeth, will you join me?
Thank you, Dr. Ziegler. Board members, I have to say I'm much more happier to be here in this capacity than I am in my normal capacity. Look, I have actually known Shelby. She was one of the first partners I met when I moved to Johnson County 6 years ago. They had a mental health first aid grant that the previous epidemiologist had offered to help with for evaluation. And so shortly after my time of getting into Johnson County, she reached out and asked if I could continue to help with that, which I gladly did. And that was where my relationship began with Shelby. But that was not at all the beginning of her relationship with Johnson County Department of Health and Environment. There's a saying in emergency response that you don't want to be handing out your business cards in the middle of an emergency. And we were so thankful that when the pandemic hit last spring, we were not handing out business cards. I remember sitting at a table, Shelby was there, talking about what to do as COVID-19 was hitting our community, whether or not we should close down schools. And that was just the beginning of our time working together during the pandemic. As soon as schools closed down and we started having more and more needs at the health department that we could not meet with our existing staff, Shelby picked up the phone with Sharon Morris from Olathe and said, hey, we have school nurses. They're not in the school buildings, but they want to help. They want to be part of the solution for our community. And it was at that first step that they became integral members of our response for the county as a whole, not just for Shawnee Mission School District. The first day of us setting up the phone bank, Shelby was there along with a number of the nurses. Stephanie Kelly is one who stood out, who is highly educated, very passionate, very smart, and very research oriented. And so early on, she was the one that we would go to develop FAQs and documents for the call center nurses who are answering calls from every resident of Johnson County who had questions. As we continue to respond to the pandemic, we began to have additional needs. We started having more and more cases that our capacity could not keep up with. And we took some of our favorite nurses, some of our best nurses, and many of those were Shawnee Mission School District nurses, and asked them if they would be willing to take on case investigation. This is a very robust process with a huge learning curve and a lot of intricate pieces, and they jumped at the opportunity because they knew how hard it was for us, how difficult the challenges we were facing, and they wanted to be part of the solution. And they worked tirelessly over the summer, volunteering their hours for us, hours and hours and hours, and giving up their summer to help the community. And Stephanie, because she is so research-oriented, would come into my office, my cubicle, and we would stand there and we would talk about policy. If you recall back to last July and August, we were very much trying to build the plane as we were flying it and trying to figure out how to bring kids back safely and what did safely look like. And I was able to read my research, and I had my views from my experience. She had other views, being from a school nursing background and being in the buildings and being so research-oriented. She would come and I would ask her to challenge my thoughts, challenge my ideas, so that we could develop the best plan to bring kids back and keep kids in school as much as possible. As we started the school year, we knew that our nurses were going to be integral members of the team now in a very different capacity in terms of doing that contact tracing to really keep COVID-19 out of school buildings. It's nothing that we could do from the health department's perspective. We don't have the relationships. The amount of work that it takes, particularly when we talk about secondary students, when there's a positive case, you have to talk to every single teacher that child sees in a single day to understand what the risks are. Those are only things that these school nurses could do, and the workload has been tremendous, to say the very least, but they have been unfailingly advocates for the community, for the students, for the staff. They have been dedicated throughout, and every time you talk to them, it is so clear that they care so deeply about the safety of your community. And I will say that their dedication and drive, quite frankly, has been frustrating for my staff because it means we got a lot of calls after hours, particularly early on. But that just goes to show how dedicated they were to making sure that they could do every single thing possible to keep the students, the staff, the custodians, the teachers, every single member of your community and their families safe from COVID-19 during this completely unprecedented time that I'm pretty sure none of them really wanted to ever do. So I could not be more appreciative of the work of Shelby and her team. While we appreciate all of our school districts, you guys stand out in terms of just challenging us, making sure, being incredibly thorough, and thinking forward. So Shelby's already been asking us about questions for next year. So we could not have done this. I think what we have achieved in Johnson County in terms of keeping schools open at a rate where most other communities did not, keeping the transmission as low as we did in classrooms is so much because of the work of Shelby and her team along with the rest of your staff and families in Shawnee Mission. So I'm thrilled to be able to stand up here today to share our appreciation from the Department of Health and Environment for the entire team and in particular Shelby. So thank you for your time.
Before we get to the video, I have a message that was sent this evening from Dr. Jennifer Watts at Children's Mercy that I think is worth sharing. Dr. Watts would be here otherwise, but she is working this evening, so we appreciate her words. She writes that Shelby has been an amazing force to have in the community advocating for children. Throughout this year, things were flipped upside down on her and as well as the team. It was so many unknowns. But she demonstrated phenomenal leadership, staying true to the science and ensuring that children were receiving the best care. She and her team were great partners in the vaccine effort and never missed a beat. They were vaccinating alongside us and never hesitated to jump in and assist at any point possible. It has been so wonderful to see her leadership in vaccinating the students this past week. She definitely trailblazed the way in allowing school districts to be able to vaccinate students in the school. Yes, Children's Mercy did come alongside and help us some this past week, but Shelby and her team had it. In the grand scheme of things, we were just a confidence booster for them. It's such a relief to know that she and her team are still going, advocating for the students and not giving up until we are safely out of the woods, including all the students. This has not been an easy year for any of us, especially those of us on the front lines. Yet this team continues to move forward with grace and patience while working tireless hours to ensure students' well-being. Thank you for all you have done, continue to do, and will keep doing until we feel confident our children are through this pandemic on the other side. We are representing just a few who wanted to express thanks to this team. We'll now share a short video that includes some thoughts from our students and staff.
This year has been tough for school nurses. A lot has been thrown at them.
It's an ongoing battle with this pandemic that our nurses continue to fight on behalf of our staff and our students to make sure that everyone is safe and healthy.
I couldn't be prouder of the way that our team has provided service. They are all shining stars in my book.
Our nurses have been leaned on to the highest level this year, and they've withstood that responsibility to a level that is so impressive and inspiring, and that's comforting to the families. I think that's why we had so many families come back to in person, is they felt like we have this. We've got this figured out.
I've had to teach in districts where there isn't a nurse, and you just, you get put in positions that are really, really difficult, and especially in a pandemic like this. We couldn't do this without them.
We are all very fortunate to be able to have some people that are qualified and capable and good with keeping everyone healthy.
I am so very proud of this team of nurses. Everyone from the building nurses, the nurse aides, our COVID team, our contact tracers, our Johnson County staff members. We have all just come together and managed this like the all-stars that they are.
I am so thankful for the nurses. They have really eased my fears of certain things that I wasn't sure about, and did a great job of just sharing the facts, and that way you could feel secure in what information that you're getting.
You know, our nurses are busy from the moment they walk into the building till the moment that they leave in the afternoon. They do it with wisdom, and they do it with the knowledge and understanding to make sure that we put everyone in the best case scenario for us to stay safe and to continue to learn.
They are strong communicators. When they see something that's not safe or not right, they're going to speak up, and that is respected. And I think we couldn't be in the point that we are in this year without their work and their strength.
You are heroes to the highest level. And Shawnee Mission principals, I know that they want me to say this to you. Thank you so much.
I think the best thing the community can do to celebrate the nurses is to mind the mitigating measures. Keep yourself safe. That's what you can do for our nurses.
I would like to say thank you for all you do, because this is such a hard time right now, and you do so much for all the students and staff. You're amazing. Thank you.
At this point, we would like to ask Shelby Raybeck to come forward as we present a special commendation to her on behalf of all who work in health services. This award states, Shawnee Mission School District Award of Distinguished Service is hereby presented to the Shawnee Mission Health Services Department in honor of your extraordinary contributions and commitment to student and staff health and safety during the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you for keeping us SMSD strong. And with that, I'd like for Shelby, would you like to make a few comments?
I would. Thank you all so much. Wow. Elizabeth, Dr. Watts, Dr. Ziegler, thank you for your kind words. Dr. Fulton, thank you for the nice letter that you sent our staff last week. And David, please thank your team for that video. We are truly humbled by this recognition. Today, I asked our health services team members what message they'd like to pass along as we receive this commendation. So these are their words. To Elizabeth, we all want to be her when we grow up. Not only are you helping the school districts, but you're helping all the entities where we live and work to navigate the pandemic. You've grounded us in the science, and you aren't afraid to pivot when the data says we can. You've brought the county health department, school districts, and Children's Mercy together for the monumental tasks of reopening and vaccinations. Our health services team wants you to know we love the strength and perseverance you've shown, and we thank you for your calm, steady approach. Many nurses said to tell you, you are our hero. Dr. Ziegler, our nurses want you to know how impressed they are with your leadership. Whether it was passing out food through the summer months, scheduling students and staff for vaccinations, or working the vaccination clinics, our team appreciates the way you roll up your sleeves and get to work. For me personally, your wicked intelligence is matched only by your wicked sense of humor. And between you and our friend David Smith, you've helped me through some of the darkest days of the pandemic. As a leader, there were days where you walked in front of me, probably to offer some protection for the inhumanity that COVID brought. You've walked behind me, supporting me in leading through the health-related issues. But most days you walk right alongside me asking, what can I do to help? And for that, I am grateful. To our Board of Education and our cabinet members, our nurses want you to know how proud they are to work for Shawnee Mission School District. They appreciate that our Board of Education, Dr. Fulton, Dr. Athan, Dr. Hubbard, brought and kept the health services voice at the table throughout the pandemic. That show of support meant a lot to them. They said the protocols, the teams, and the mitigating measures put in place early on and adapted as needed throughout the year have been phenomenal and made them feel well prepared to serve and support school staff, students, and parents. They mentioned dumpster fires and craziness going on around us, but always felt at peace knowing that our administration was staying science-based. They said you stayed strong and listened to the county health department, and your willingness to stand your ground despite the pressure has made Shawnee Mission School District stand out as the best district by far. And they put the best district by far in all caps. And lastly, I just want to personally thank my team members. First and foremost, our building nurses and aides. I've worried about the amount of work this team has been asked to do this year. Contact tracing, testing, and vaccinations added to the already busy days just never seemed doable to me. But each time I asked, I was met with, yes, I can do that. And then, what else can I do to help? I have about 100 text messages in my phone responding, I'll go cover that building, on my way now. I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for being excellent nurses and nurse aides, but most of all for being excellent human beings, that you truly are the best team ever. Next, our Maxim agency nurses and Kelly subs. These nurses stepped in, stepped up, and have been a shining example of professionalism, compassion, dedication, and hard work. The biggest compliment I can give them is to say, you've proven yourselves SMSD worthy. To Mark, our staff member on loan from the County Health Department, I'm sure it's his military background, but he has the ability to get an insane amount of work done in a very short amount of time, and always, always with a positive attitude. He is a valued member of this team, and we couldn't have done this work without him. And last, but certainly not least, to our COVID team, Cindy, Joanne, Kim, Paula, and Stephanie. When it comes right down to it, you are the reason we are receiving this commendation. None of this is possible without your tireless work, the late nights, the early mornings, the evenings and weekends. At every moment, you have stepped up to all the challenges without hesitation. One day, people will read in history books about the work you've done. I have the utmost respect, not only for the nurses that you are, but for your consistent approach of always asking, what is the right thing to do? Doing what's right is what brought you together as a team, what makes you such an amazing team, and what makes it the honor of my life to work with you. Thank you all for this recognition. We are truly humbled and appreciate you all. Thank you.
Well, again, we want to thank everyone from the health services team and our partners who have been involved in helping us to journey through this pandemic together. And as we continue down that road, we know that we'll do the things that are right and safe that will help children and adults alike. So thank you again for all that you do. I do want to mention that to everyone that School Nurse Day is formally celebrated on May 12th. So we'll certainly want to celebrate that with them. Tonight, we have another celebration. We want to recognize the National Library, this is National Library Month, and the leadership and expertise of school librarians through a proclamation. Next week, as we look forward to honoring educators as Educator Appreciation Week takes place, these are great events in the life of a school district, and we appreciate all that our staff does to help our students in their learning. You know, it's been a year of challenges, but we have a lot to celebrate and recognize because of all who have stepped up to keep us SMSD strong this year. And our community is grateful for all that our staff has done to help our students, so thank you. We also have a food service update. We've been informed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture that all student meals will be provided at no cost for the 21-22 school year. Additional details are currently being developed, and we'll share more information when it becomes available. And, you know, as we do this, we'll continue to look at the increased cost of providing food service, and we'll reflect that in our rates for next year, knowing that the USDA is going to cover the cost. So that's a wonderful thing, and that's great news for our students. And then finally, before we get to a bond update, at the last board meeting when we gave our big presentation on how we were going to use our federal funds to help students in their learning, the idea came up about creating an ESSER page for that would remind people of important messages related to what we shared that evening, including the fact that, you know, we're very grateful for the funds that we're getting. It's going to make a difference in the life of every child that we serve. We also recognize that these are one-time funds and that some of the things that we're able to do over the next 3 years that are desperately needed will not probably be able to continue once those funds go away. And so we want to remind people of all the good things that are happening and also a little bit of a reality check on what comes down the road in 3 years as we have to make adjustments. But that will either is or will be up and live here tonight, and just, you know, stay tuned to that as a way of being informed about what's happening. I want to conclude with kind of a brief overview of where we are with our bond issue right now. And so we have a presentation for you that will kind of walk through it. I want to start with Westwood View Elementary. You know, at Westwood, we've completed the community planning phase of the new Westwood View Elementary School. The Westwood City Council recently approved the plans, including locating Westwood View on a new site. And so demolition of an existing structure on that new site has already started. Construction of the new building is planned for June 2021. Westwood View students will remain in their current school until the new school is completed. And as a reminder, Rushton students will use the existing Westwood View Elementary School during their demolition and their new construction process. So we're very excited about Westwood View, and you can see the renderings of these schools to get a little bit of an idea of what they're going to look like, and the architects and all construction management firms, everybody involved is doing a wonderful job on these facilities. Next, we have John Deemer Elementary. We've completed the community planning phase for John Deemer. The Overland Park Planning Commission is currently reviewing the plans. We hope to complete that process and have approval from the Overland Park City Council in time for a June 2021 start date. The first step is to demolish the current building and then begin construction on the new school. John Deemer students will attend school at the Indian Creek campus until the new school is completed. Get a little bit of an idea of what that looks like. Pawnee Elementary is just beginning the community planning phase for their new school. When it's completed, when that planning phase is complete, then we'll begin to engage with the Overland Park Planning Commission and eventually the Overland Park City Council for approval Our target date to begin construction is October 2021. Pawnee will be constructed on site, and students will stay in the existing school until the new school is completed, at which point the current school will be demolished. So it gives you a little bit of an update on the elementary schools. We'll talk about secondary for a moment. On the next several slides, you're going to see some secondary school specific projects, including restrooms. That's been an important point of discussion for us because one of our goals in this bond issue is to provide privacy options for students in all of our buildings. This is a long-term goal. It's going to take time to accomplish it, and that will happen as we renovate and replace buildings over time. And these privacy options include increased use of individual spaces when possible for restrooms. We're tentatively scheduled to start these projects by no later than summer of 2022, and it's our hope that we can get going on them much sooner than that. For Shawnee Mission North, there's a couple of, if you go back, sorry. For Shawnee Mission North, there is, they're going to have a weight room addition and restroom renovations that will provide much needed improvement for students in the areas of personal fitness and privacy. So we're excited about that for them. See the rendering there. At Shawnee Mission Northwest, they're going to have a complete redesign of the commons area, and that'll bring a welcoming environment to the Shawnee Mission Northwest students, staff, and visitors, and it will also provide increased privacy for students with some of the restroom renovations. At Indian Woods, we are adding some classroom spaces and collaboration space that will support the school's academic mission, and changes will also include the restroom remodels, again, with a focus on increasing privacy for all students. So that's a pretty rendering right there. And then this summer, we're also going to see the start of a number of improvement projects that will continue over the next 18 months. These are perhaps a little less exciting, but very important. We all like HVAC. We like it when it's hot outside to be cool inside, and when it's cold outside to be warm inside at appropriate levels, right? So that's what the HVAC upgrades are all about, along with the kind of good air quality that keeps students healthy and in school. So this will give you a little bit of an idea of where those projects are taking place. These upgrades were approved at our March 22nd board meeting under bond consent item, and that was item number 3. Our playground replacements were approved by the board also on March 22nd. That was consent item 5.02. And you can see, getting a little bit of an idea of where those playground replacements are taking place at. The roof repair replacement was approved on March 22nd as well. That was item 5.01. And we have 3 schools identified: Broadmoor, Broken Arrow, and Shawnee Mission West. And then we also have asphalt repair overlay also approved at March 22nd board meeting. That was consent item 5.04. And you can see we've got to have a large number of schools that are getting their asphalt redone. And that's something that we always appreciate when we see fresh asphalt with parking places marked, ways that you actually know where you're supposed to park. So that's a good thing. And then security upgrades, those were approved February 22nd, 2021. That was consent item 5.09. And you can see kind of the start on that and the fact that we're going to look at cameras, monitor doors, and so on. Furniture replacement, we have a couple of those up for tonight, 6.10, 6.11. To get new furniture into the schools are designated on the screen. And then also we have carpet and tile upgrades also on tonight. That's 6.09 for the schools that are mentioned there. And then finally, this gives you, we have a slide, gives you a little bit of an idea of what the final timelines are for the various projects that we're involved in. And, our goal is to stay on time as best we can, but understanding that there are certain pressures in the construction world out there that we're facing and everybody else that makes some of this a little bit challenging, but we're going to stay true to our timeline as best we can. And with that, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. That was a lot of information. I'm still a little teary over the award. So we'll move into our board reports from our board members. Ms. Borgman, do you have a report for us from SMAC?
Yes, I do. SMAC wanted me to pass along that the DEI book drive concluded last month with a generous donation from Lathrop GPM. We're proud to share that all 604 books on the librarian's wish list have been fulfilled. Some of these books are now in the libraries, while others are still being sorted and shipped. A heartfelt thank you to our community for supporting our kids through literature. So, thank you. And just one more thing, as we wrap up the year and prepare for the new year, SMAC will be hosting the annual School of Instruction training of upcoming PTA officers virtually on May 19th.
Thank you. Ms. Embry, do you have an update for us from the foundation?
I was just going to reiterate that the event is Thursday night at 6:30 p.m. It's the Distinguished Leaders Speaker Series. It's going to feature some of our seniors. A couple of them were actually named by Dr. Fulton. Bianca Musselman, who won the Animation Award, has something she's submitted for the event Thursday night, and Layla Hamid does as well. So please tune in and get to see our amazing seniors.
Thank you. Reverend Guy, do you have an update for us from the KASB Board of Directors?
I do. It's been a very busy month with KASB and also with NSBA. So I'll start there. The NSBA, National School Board Association Annual Conference, was an online conference this year, and so I attended that and heard lots of fantastic speakers, Leslie Odom Jr., Sonia Nazario. I attended a workshop that was actually students from Topeka Public Schools that talked about how current affects them as students. And so it was a fascinating panel discussion with the students getting to share their ideas. Lots of other great speakers. So that was a great time of learning, and it was very exciting to see that KASB's own Frank Henderson, who is on the Siemens School Board, was elected the NSBA Vice President this year. So next year he will be the president. So we'll have a Kansan as the leader of the National School Board Association next year. So we're very excited and very proud of Frank, and we congratulate him. Then I attended in person last week the KASB Women's Leadership Conference, which was held in Manhattan, Kansas. There was also an online component for that conference as well. There was a fantastic presentation from Dr. Helen Fagan about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so she was fantastic. Pam Lewis also attended that conference, and she said, we need to get her to Shawnee Mission. And I agree, Dr. Helen Fagan was outstanding. Sarah Smarsh spoke as a keynote. And then I was asked to facilitate a conversation for one of the breakout sessions where they just had school board leaders. This was a women's conference. I saw women leaders on school boards. And we were just supposed to give them conversation starters. And myself and the other facilitator really didn't have much to do because people were so anxious to talk to other school board leaders about what the last year has been and what's working and what isn't working, and sharing ideas. And so it was wonderful. At the end of our time together, one of the women said, this was the best part of the whole conference. And I thought, well, that's great. I think that's what we desperately needed, just a time to be together and to talk to others and to learn from others and to share our experiences. So I'll end by saying that there is an opportunity this week on Thursday night to do that online with other school board members at the Spring Roundtable, the KASB Roundtable for our area will be this Thursday night. I believe it starts at 5:30, but you can still sign up for that if you are available. And there'll be small breakout rooms where we can still have conversation with other school board people in the area and from around the state, and share experiences and get some more great ideas. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Goodburn, do you have an update for us from the Policy Review Committee?
Our next meeting is Monday, the 10th of May.
Thank you. And Mr. Stratton from Finance and Facilities?
Yes, the Finance and Facilities Committee met last week. We had a full agenda. We walked through An update from our bond council. So a representative from the bond organization that's posting and eventually selling our bond gave us an update on the finances and the timeline for that. Many of the bond project updates were shared, some of those in the slideshow today. We also spent some time going through the ESSER funds so that the committee had a better understanding of the funds that have currently been allocated, those that are yet to be allocated. And so we walked through that as well. And then an overall budget update. And then our next meeting is in June. And I turned to Dr. Sinclair. Did I forget anything?
No, it was a packed meeting, but it was good.
Right.
Good conversation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, moving on to the board financial report. I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Fulton and Mr. Knapp.
Okay, thank you very much. And Russ Knapp's going to provide your monthly financial report.
Well, good evening, board. Attached to the board agenda is the March board financial report through March 31st. As always, we've been keeping an eye on the operating funds through this school year, and our vacancy savings continue to match our revenue loss. As I reported earlier in the fall, we're going to have anticipated about $5 million in general state aid reduction. So far, we've been seeing the vacancy savings materialize as we go through each month. So that's good news there. Food service, I wanted to give you a quick update on that because Dr. Fulton mentioned that all meals were free this year, and we were pretty nervous about that fund, but as school came more in full session, the volume of the meals picked up, so we're getting more federal reimbursement, so that's covering the cost of the labor, because we had the labor costs but very little volume. Now we got the volume and kind of the same labor costs. So we anticipate that fund breaking even by June 30th. Okay, so that's good news as well. He mentioned the ESSER funds. I believe that is live on our website, so we'll keep that up to date. We will spend ESSER 1 by June 30th. We'll get all that spent. ESSER 2, you remember, it's about $10,560,000. We're in that application process right now, so we still have to submit that and get that approved, and then ESSER 3 is down the road a little bit. So that's where we are at that, and I wanted to give you an update on the February natural gas bill. If you recall, that was $1.6 million. We still have not paid that. We engaged with James Zakura. If anybody knows who James is, he's with Smithman and Zakura law firm, and he has signed up many clients from the universities to many school districts and a lot of businesses that are affected by symmetry. And so they have sent a letter, and the letter basically just said, hey, tell us about the agreement, tell us why the rate that you're charging that you can charge. So basically it's just getting some information back from them at this point. At this time we have not heard a response, so that's kind of where we're at. I still consider it's a liability right now on our books because we do owe that $1.6 million until something other materializes. And that's my report, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Do we have questions from board members? Yeah, it looks like we do. Mr. Stratton?
I'll defer to Dr. Sinclair. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm going to direct this to Dr. Fulton. Has there been discussion amongst district administrators about the use of kind of that variable rate for utilities? I know there's incredible pressure to keep the costs down, and utilities being one of them, it's a lot of pressure on districts, but given what happened in Texas and the impact it's had on, is that a practice that we need, that is being...
Well, it's certainly something I think you have to ask a question about. We haven't had issues with it historically, but we certainly did in this 1 month. So I think we'll go through this case, see what happens, and that will probably help inform what our future behaviors will look like. I don't know, Mr. Knapp or Dr. Atha, if you'd like to add to that or not.
Yeah, I would echo that. Be a little patient, see what comes of this. Hopefully, we don't have to worry about this again until January, February of next year, but we'll see what our options are.
It certainly is worth asking the question and giving pause, but historically it's been a good strategy. So
Yes.
Let's see how this shakes out first.
Thank you.
Mr. Stratton?
My question had to do with the update on the food services, just to make sure I understand it. So the federal government is coming forward and taking care of the cost for the next academic school year. Did you say that includes all labor costs, or will we have to change that because of
No,
this new offering?
So meals are free this year as well as next year, but they've been reimbursing us at the summer lunch program rate, which is a little bit higher than the regular school year rate. So that hasn't changed, so that's how we get our money this year. What changes is the volume of meals that we're serving, which we can turn in to get reimbursed. So our revenues are higher, but our labor costs is out of our pockets, stays relatively stable.
I didn't know if this would cause an increase in labor costs.
Probably a little bit, but not as much, because we're still staffing all the buildings to serve the meals. So if you're only serving 100 meals, then versus 1,000 meals. Yeah. So that's where I talk about the volume.
Okay. I don't want to look the gift horse in the mouth, so to speak, but at the same time, I want to make sure that we understand the cost that we might have to absorb on it.
The food cost would increase. So we're serving more meals, the food cost would go up, but that labor would stay stable.
All right. Thank you.
Ms. Workman?
Mr. Knapp, so thank you for the update. $1.6 million February gas bill. It's on hold right now.
Mm-hmm.
How long do we have? I mean, what's kind of the timeline? Where do we go from here?
That's a good question. That's part of the letter that we sent. I'm waiting for that response. I think in the letter we asked for like May 15th to give us an answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I saw Ms. Goodburn indicating, did you have a question? No? Ms. Embry? Mm-hmm.
It sounds like we're still waiting on understanding our ESSER 3 allocations. What's the timeline for that?
I think that was that early June that they were going to?
I believe that's right, for
Was the
ESSER 3.
target?
Yeah, they have to get all of the applications in, and they're quite halfway there or not. We'll probably get ours in this week, and then they have to go through and review them, approve them. And so I would guess it's going to be June sometime before we know for sure.
Reverend Guy, did you have any questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Knapp. Appreciate it. And now we can talk to Dr. Little with regards to our legislative update from Topeka.
And we're excited to have Dr. Stuart Little, our district lobbyist, with us here tonight, and David Smith will join in as appropriate.
Is this on? Is it on now?
Yeah, it's on.
Great. Good evening. Stuart Little, Government Relations in Topeka. I am here to discuss legislative issues. The legislature returns next Monday for the wrap-up session. Normally at this time of year, unless there's litigation going on, we have 3 or 4 things that we're watching. There is a lengthy list of probably 10 items that we need to talk about. So, Madam President, you cut me off or tell me when I need to be quiet so you can move on. I do have a written report for you that has been updated and revised, and it was perfectly in tune until about an hour and 10 minutes ago when the governor signed the budget bill. So that will there are some updates in here. This was originally sent when the legislature adjourned 2 weeks ago, and there's a revised version that has the vetoes in it, and I'll go through and talk about those. I'll be happy to answer any questions, give you kind of an overview of where we are at this point, and kind of what I anticipate happening in the next, however long the legislature will be here when they come back on Monday. I would note that when the legislature we began this session, there were 4 things we were going to talk about that the legislature was going to do in the biggest picture: property tax transparency, income tax reductions, constitutional amendment on abortion, and changes to the Kansas Emergency Management Act. By the time the regular session concluded, all 4 of those pieces of legislation had been passed, and they've made their way through the process. The income tax bill was vetoed by the governor. It's about a $300 million tax cut over 3 years, and so I'll talk briefly about that. And now what we're looking at as we go into the wrap-up session is some complexity for a couple of reasons. Number one, the education bill that failed to pass at the end of the legislative session, that had both the entire K-12 education budget as well as policy issues in there, and I've got a description. It's the expansion of the education scholarship program that's already in place, creation of a new education savings account, had a couple of other policy issues in there as well as the budget. That failed to pass the legislature, and so that leaves open, as we go into the wrap-up session, an approved budget, but 45% of the budget hasn't been dealt with yet because that's K-12 education. Adding other complexity to that, a variety of policy bills that were vetoed, that will be a lengthy list of things that the legislature will go after, and probably complicating things as well more broadly is the what began today. The budget committees began meeting today, and the Senate Ways and Means met today. House Appropriations will meet tomorrow, and looking at the revenue, the federal relief money, the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA as we're calling it now, and what that will mean for state government, because folks are now evaluating where can we use that money and deal with the budget and make those kinds of changes, which that's not the kind of complexity one would like to add at the wrap-up session to get a budget done and to get and make those kinds of decisions, but it's there. So I'm going to run through and talk about a couple of issues and then hit on pages 2 and 3 of my report some of the highlights of what's going on. What we've got when we get into this veto session is both education policy and budget. We're going to have conversations about what to do with the federal money. We're going to have to deal with the veto issues, and I'll talk about that. And one of the last issues that's going to be fairly complex is what they were trying to do at the end of the regular session was in part, and this doesn't necessarily directly impact us as a school district, but it has an impact on some of the conversations in Topeka, is that there are conversations about how do we use some of this federal relief money to try to make business organizations whole, more whole, give them some kind of relief after counties and cities imposed essential business space space utilization, what could be closed and what could be open. That's a kind of pretty significant conversation, because for local units of government, cities and counties and the state, some of this ARPA money is going to be used to make some of those kind of places, those folks whole. The budget, as I described, has already been done, has been signed. There were a lot of vetoes in it, one that's of some significance with regard to kind of continued COVID response. The legislature had interjected themselves into the process for distributing these federal funds, and since last year during the 2020 legislative session, there's been a process in place where the committee established by the governor with legislative membership and then going to the State Finance Council was how federal dollars were spent through the Sparks program. I don't even know what that amounts for even a year later, but the acronym for distribution of those federal dollars. What has happened is that the legislature put into the budget bill a provision that said that distribution of federal dollars would be managed by the Legislative Coordinating Council, which essentially cut the governor out of that process for distributing those dollars. They put that into the budget bill. That was one of the 18 items that the governor vetoed in the budget today, which is, of course, it has an impact in some ways on how dollars are spent, where they go. Is the legislature, without governor's input, going to pass this, or is the governor going to have a say in that? At this point, that provision's been vetoed, so we'll have to go through a process of wrestling with that and whether to override the veto or not. So that's out there as well for the budget side. The other thing that I would mention about the budget and related to tax policy, the veto of the tax cut bill, it had a very thin margin when it passed and was sent to the governor. She vetoed it. The day after she vetoed the bill, we got the revenue estimates in for the next 18 months, which suggested that we were going to pick up an additional $360 million and would have an ending balance going forward of over $1 billion. And so I think that's going to have an impact on some legislators. You needed to switch 3 votes in the House to get to override the veto. And so I think that looks more likely now because there was enough revenue coming in that it provides some justification. And I'm not saying that for myself, but for legislators who would be able to say, we can make this transition. That's going to be an issue. I would point out before I get to the education issues, because some of these things are tied to the budget process. Just today, there was provided a lengthy set of documents that describe the federal relief dollars that are coming to the state. You can look on the KS legislative website. There was a link posted on the legislative research page that I retweeted and tagged the district, so you can just go there and pull that up and follow that link. And there's a list of a lot of there's a big report about the ARPA funds, the use of those, the distribution of those, the parameters. And so this is what the legislature received today in terms of what can be used with those dollars. And these are significant dollars. The report has, overall for the state, it has a total of 1.6 billion for state government, 1.2 billion for education, 989 million for city and county governments, 412 million for social services, 250 million for housing assistance, 200 million to healthcare providers. So there's a significant amount of money there, and overall of the ARPA money, which is I like to call it CARES 3. They were easier when there was CARES 1 in March, CARES 2 in December, and then the ARPA now, which has come out. But so overall, that's 4.8 billion that'll be coming into the state out of this latest round. And since COVID relief began, state of Kansas, just for comparative purposes, has received $19.9 billion, including PPP and those kind of things, from the federal government to deal with this. So there's a significant amount of money in the pool. And that makes budget complexity when there's that much money not laying around, but to be dealt with. So on the education side, we have about a couple of issues, and I'll hit them very quickly. The school finance bill that was vetoed on a 2020, it passed the Senate, passed the House with 64 votes. You need 63. You need 21 in the Senate, and it died 20-20. It's interesting to speculate, what does that mean? How is that interpreted with the legislature going forward? What are they going to do when they come back? It wasn't vetoed. The bill, I would certainly anticipate, if it would have passed the Senate, would have been vetoed by the governor, and there would have been insufficient votes to override the veto, because you would need to pick up a significant amount of votes. That wasn't going to happen. So at this point, it'll be interesting to see what the legislature chooses to do. Number one, what are you going to do about K-12 education funding? What are you going to do about the policy issues that were in there? Are you going to split them out? Are you going to keep them together? We don't have any indication of how that's going to look yet. The Senate Ways and Means Committee was plowing through the budget today. There wasn't a conversation about where they wanted that to go. The House will have the same conversation tomorrow. So that leaves kind of to be dealt with. How will this be managed going forward? And there's some speculation when things fail like that. What does it mean? Does that mean we need to add more to this bill? Do we need to add some other stuff to it to see if that picks up votes? Do we need to split them apart and have that conversation? Or do we want to fall back to and cut out some of the things that we know and believe to be more controversial, leave that out? The newest thing, for example, the education savings account, if you set that out of that bill would have passed with probably even more votes. That's just the logic of the way things work in Topeka. But how do people interpret what happened? What does it mean to have these kind of votes, and what do you want to go on the record for? Even if a bill were to be sent to the governor that she would veto, is that one of the messages you want to send? I don't know how that's going to play out. That is a long, complex process that'll probably mean that our wrap-up session will last a significant amount of time, I suspect. So that's one issue. That's where we are in school finance. That's what we've got to do. Oh, and by the way, left out of any of this conversation is renewal of the statewide 20 mills, which expires on June 30th of this year and raises about $750 million, which is the core of funding for K-12 education. So the budget process, we're going to have to see how that gets set out, what legislative leadership wants to do with that. I don't know that anybody's had any clear indications of what's going on there, but that's going to be a challenge. The couple of policy issues I would mention real briefly. The governor did veto House Bill 2039, which was both the civics exam and the financial literacy component. Those were policy bills that kind of eked their way through the committee, came out at the end. The State Department's Board of Education last week in a gentle comment to the governor, suggested that this was an infringement upon their authority. The governor did veto the bill. It is probably dead because it needs a lot of votes to override a veto, so that's probably dealt with. The couple of other things that were vetoed, the Senate Bill 55, which was the transgender athletics bill that passed the legislature, excuse me, was sent to the governor. She vetoed the bill, and I think it is probably dead. It would need to pick up at least 8 votes in the House to override the veto. I don't see, this is kind of an issue that people know where they are on it, and there's not a lot of wavering, I don't think, so I would assume this issue is dead. The other bill that was vetoed last week was 2089, which was the bill that said if you as a school board choose to provide firearms education, it has to be a prescribed set of programs that includes Kansas Wildlife and Parks, hunter safety, the National Rifle Association's Eddie Eagle program, and those kind of things. Governor vetoed that under the same pretenses. That bill, it'll be interesting to see what happens on a veto override on that. It's a little closer than any of the other bills, and what kind of outside interests will choose to weigh in and make this an issue. So all of these are probably going to get another run at them and veto overrides, and those things take a bit of time to get in place and make sure everybody's doing what they want to do. A couple of other issues I would mention: the Taxpayer Transparency Act, which was the repeal of the tax lid. We were never a part of that because we have our own tax lid imposed by the funding formula. This was a local government tax lid, cities, counties. That was repealed. A new policy was put in place. At the very last moment, they decided that school districts should be a part of that, so they had to go through a process and adjust the timelines. That was in House Bill 2104 that was passed, and the governor did sign that, so those new deadlines are set. And I don't know if Mr. Knapp has comments about that, what that does for the process, but that's what we have to live with. And I think the final agreement, excuse me, was what the KASB and other education organizations have said, this kind of fits with what we can do. A couple of other things I would mention. Madam President, you can tell me to be quiet when the time comes, but we may come back and revisit. I'm sorry.
I said, just keep going.
Okay.
It's fine.
One of the things that we may revisit that it is potentially, and this was getting kicked around again, that kind of last week of the legislative session, there were a lot of things going on. Senate Bill 40, which was the revision to the Kansas Emergency Management Act that had in it I'm trying to find the right way to describe this, kind of this bare bones idea of what a grievance process would look like if someone felt aggrieved by the actions of an elected body. Because that was the whole point of the KEMA, to make elected bodies responsible and to provide a means for input. There were folks at the last week of the session that were not happy with how that was being implemented and wanted to impose some structure and greater organization and some constraints on how that process would work to the benefit of the aggrieved, frankly. And that failed to pass, failed to get out of committee. There was a lot of conversation about, we were literally 14 days into living under this law, and was it already time to start making changes? The subsequent to that, the state Supreme Court issued some guidance for what the process should. There was a district court decision that even kind of muddied it. So the Supreme Court intervened and may have addressed most of those issues. I feel like that's something that's probably still going to maybe dealt with legislatively as time has passed. And you know, I don't know how some of these hearings have played out in school districts, but I would keep that on the radar. That may be something that comes back up that we would need to deal with at the end of this legislative session. I think the rest of my report, there's a number of other bills that were signed, the Students' Right to Know Act and those kind of things. They're listed in the report. I won't take your time doing it. And the rest of it is just kind of a summary of legislation. So really what's going on now is trying to make sure that the budget gets passed. That would be probably priority one. And to make sure that whatever policy conversations take place are, this is the time of year that we're not going to go through a hearing and we're going to have a chance to come in and testify, and we're not going to have a chance to do communicate and those kind of things, because this last wrap-up session is where things happen at odd times of the day, and where stuff that's on the table, policy issues and funding issues on the table, are going to get crammed together. And so I think what's going to make it complex is figuring out what to do with the federal money, because there's a lot of money out there and folks want to try to stick it in to the budget where they can. The one thing they can't do is pass tax cuts and use the federal money to plug a hole. You can't use it to pay pension debt for you, Mr. Stratton, just to answer that question. Those are some of the parameters in there. But you can do a lot of other things with it. The presentation that was made today said we still don't have all of the federal guidance. We anticipate in the written document, talks about by May 11th, which would be a week into the veto session. So I think a lot of this is going to be dealing with the budget process. A lot of folks doing the pure political calculations about, you put all of these things together in a policy and a budget bill for K-12 and it wouldn't pass. Do we need to add more, or do we need to split it up and start to limit it? And that, because we're not going to go back to the committee process, that won't be something that will happen in the most open way possible. So we'll have to see how things unfold. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I do have a question really quick, since you're referring to the committee process, the Eddie Eagle bill, because that didn't go through committee, and I think it was it gut and goat onto something, or was it amended onto something?
It was in House Fed and State Affairs. It was an amendment. The bill had been offered 2 or 3 times in prior years. It was an amendment added on to a bill in House Fed and State Affairs Committee. As it came out of committee, it did not have a public hearing or an opportunity for.
So there was no input from KASB or NEA or any.
Correct.
Well, even legislators, I was told, didn't have any information on it. So since that did not get a committee hearing, and I don't even know that we have anything on it particular to that in our platform, but there's certainly an opportunity at this juncture to discuss why mandating a specific type of curriculum that districts would have to use if they decided to go down that route is outside their purview. I mean, it gives me pause to hear that they would say, no, this is definitively the program you would need to use under any circumstances, let alone with this particular topic. So I guess my question is, will there be an opportunity for input from people who are education professionals who would have thoughts on that, or even, folks who have perhaps passed the civics test and understand the separation of powers with regards to whose obligation and responsibility it is to select curriculum?
To have committee meetings, one would need approval from leadership. I would suspect, because the education bill has failed and the education budget has failed, that there will be a committee will have to meet and put something together, and it may be carving up what's in front of them in Senate Bill 175, which we knew, I guess, is 2119 for the most part, and they kind of would work off of that. To have a public hearing would be, at the purview of the chair, but that would be abnormal at this point in the legislative process.
Since we don't even have a budget, though, I mean, which committee, would it just go to conference committee? I guess I've followed the legislature for years, and I'm trying to figure out how pieces work coming back without a budget as well.
Well, and we have historically, and this can get really nerdy here, but historically we'd had a budget done by the time we got to the veto session, and then you did essentially an omnibus budget, a small little budget. There were at least, I think, 2 times related to school finance where we passed policy and budget issues at the same time. One of them, I think, was in 2017. The other one may have been in 2014, when we were responding to equity and those kinds of issues where we had budget and policy together, and you would put them together and it doesn't violate the rules. So it is not unusual. It is not uncommon, but it doesn't happen all the time. And so there was nothing necessarily out of line about putting those two things together. We've never done, I don't think, I'm trying to think of the whole budget. We may have that one time in 17. But you're going to have that, and part of procedurally, to go back to your civics comment, procedurally, the House Education Budget Committee is an appropriations subcommittee of House Appropriations, so they can do a budget bill. They can work on, pass out a budget bill. That's one of their committee duties. So there is a process that can go. The Senate, on the other hand, does not have a process like that. The only committee that can do appropriations is Ways and Means. And so, so that's likely where, that's where the big mega bill policy and ed together came out of House K-12 Ed Budget Committee, and that's likely where it will come again.
Does anyone else have any questions? Dr. Sinclair?
I was going back to the bill at 2119 and all those other pieces that got dumped in. One of the other parts of that was those restrictions on remote learning. Mm-hmm. Was that a piece that you think would remain in there, or something that could get pulled out as well, just being so?
I think it fits into that policy issue, which was originally began that if you had gone to no in-person option last fall, you were going to lose money. You would have to pay. I think, pay back some of that money. This was the original idea for this bill. It evolved into what was finally added in here, which was going forward. And if you went into a process where there was no in-person option, no in-person learning option, what would happen would be that you would end up getting funded for those students at the virtual pupil rate, which is a flat $5,000 per pupil. And so it was essentially designed to make sure that if you chose to do something and had an in-person, a virtual option, that you had to have an in-person option, or you ran the risk of there was enough pushback that there was injected into that an appeals process to the State Board of Education and those kind of things. But that was kind of the sanction. You will have an in-person option for anybody that chooses it, and you would potentially get a budget reduction if you didn't. And so the issue, I guess, is whether is that alive. That comes back to the question that I said, when your bill fails, what do you do? Add more or take things out?
Okay, so we just have to wait and see kind of on that.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Embry?
I don't have a question. I was just going to share for people, because I didn't know it until a couple of months ago, that all of Stewart's lobbyist updates are actually on our website for SMSD, and anytime we testify before the legislature, that testimony also gets posted to the website. I just think it's useful for patrons out there. It's a lot to follow. You can go back and track through all of that.
Thank you.
And we did have a recent presentation on what we're planning on doing with our ESSER dollars and how it's so important that they not get supplanted, so that we can do what we need to do to buttress our students as they come out of, COVID learning issues. So it would be useful to make sure our legislative delegation was aware that information is available also on our website, so that they can have those talking points at the ready as they go in to debate the budget coming up. Because if they decide to supplant those funds, we will not be able to do what we are going to attempt to set out to do with those dollars. Are there any final questions or comments? Dr. Little, thank you so much. Topeka is challenging.
Thank you.
Okay. We are now moving to the budget workshop non-operating funds presentation from Mr. Knapp.
Yes, tonight Russell Knapp, our Chief Financial Officer, will provide our non-operating fund overview. Now, as a reminder, this is the first of two presentations. The next one will be at our next board meeting, our only board meeting of May 17th, where he'll talk about the operating funds. But tonight we're going to discuss the non-operating funds. So, Mr. Knapp, it's all yours.
Thank you. Yes, it is that time of the year that we talk about budget for the future year. And again, tonight is the first of two, and the next one will be on May 17th, where we'll talk about operating funds. As we know, we went through that strategic plan process. The budget is the financial resources that support all of the strategies that come out of the strategic plan. Go ahead, Terry. Thank you. So tonight, we're going to kind of focus on the non-operational budget. This slide is just to kind of define the difference between operational and non-operational. Our operational is our day-to-day expenditures for salary and benefits, utilities, and student transportation. Our non-operational are more of the larger capital projects that take care of our facilities, a lot of our repairs of our buildings, and it was a great example of the superintendent's report. You saw a lot of those projects that capital dollars pay for. Thank you, Terry. So you've seen this slide before. So this is updated for the 2021 budget. We're going to go through tonight's presentation. We're going to talk about the capital outlay fund, the bond and interest fund, and the bond proceeds that hopefully we're going to bring to you on May 17th. Flow-through funds and a group of self-supported funds. Each one of these is restricted for their own purpose, either by statute or the fees that are received, such as gifts and grants and donations. You can see down there a lot of what we spend those monies on, and I'll touch a little bit on those when I go through the presentation. A lot of the funds that are in the non-operating category get their money from local taxes. So our assessed valuation, right now we anticipate it going up 3.6%, close to $4.5 billion. In March, we were brought in and we meet with the Johnson County assessor. They give us the preliminary numbers, and then we build our estimate on that. And Allison Strosky does that for us, and she does an excellent job on it. We've been right around the 5 to 6% growth for the last 5 years, so this is slightly down, but I'll take 3.6% any day and coming out of a pandemic. So that's good news. As you know, we will get, this is just our estimate. The county will provide us an estimate in June to build our budget on, and then it doesn't get finalized until October, the final AV number. Okay. Next slide, Terry. Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of our funds are all set up by state statute, what we can collect and what we can spend those on. So we put this slide in here just for the capital outlay purpose. It spells out what you can spend your capital outlay revenue dollars on. It's probably been about 3 years now, maybe 3 to 4 years ago, where they expanded it a little bit, and we can put large software purchases in there and uniforms, and we do that. Next slide, Terry. So I'm going to jump into the capital outlay fund. This year, for 2021, capital outlay pretty much is going to break even. We're going to spend, we anticipate spending a little bit less than what we're going to bring in, but we still have 3 months left to go. That will leave us with about $15.9 million beginning fund balance. We levy 8 mills. That's the most you can levy for state by state statute, 8 mills. That generates about $36.5 million is what we anticipate for next school year. We have some miscellaneous revenue, our Apple devices when they get repairs. So we anticipate having about $52.5 million available to spend next year. Next slide, please. So this is a very high-level summary of how we're going to spend our capital outlay dollars. Our schools and departments, they spend about $1.9 million. So the schools all have the opportunity to, they get an allocation to buy equipment and furniture in their school buildings, and departments the same process as well. So that's about $1.9 million of our capital outlay budget. Technology, as you can imagine, takes up a pretty good chunk of $4.6 million. We purchase a lot of our large software items. So that'd be like Skyward, our student management system, Business Plus, our finance system. Drew has Cisco maintenance, which is a large chunk of his technology budget, but that comes to about 4.6 million. Operation and maintenance makes up about 27%, close to 13 million. About half of that is just on day-to-day operations, repairs, supplies and services that we run through our capital outlay budget. The other half is cycle projects, so larger cycle projects where we'll bring in an architect, have some other fees associated with it, and we'll take do those cycle projects. Example would be HVAC, asphalt, etc. Salaries and benefits. We currently have $4.56 million allocated there, and we've had that for many years. Those are mainly our maintenance skilled positions. In this budget is the $2.3 million of custodials that we're going to move from operating funds over to O&M. That's the first half of the phase of covering the strategic plan for a workload reduction at the secondary buildings. So that budget is about $6.9 million. Then we have about $17.9 million that is bond debt and Apple leases. Happy to report next year will be the last bond payment for Series 2017A. That's $10.6 million, so that comes off the books, and we no longer will have any bond debt in the capital outlay fund. So these are general obligation bonds that are backed by capital outlay tax revenues. So that just leaves the Apple leases that we layer in every year when we do our refresh. Okay. So that's $17.9 million. That leaves about 3.2 of unallocated just for those unforeseen things that might pop up. We hopefully do not use that. That means something bad happened if we were to get to there. We try to leave $5 million as a bare minimum in this fund, and that's our cash flow purpose. That's at June 30th, and we don't get our next big tax check until January. So that $5 million, again, we'd like to have a lot higher. This is the bare minimum, but that would get us through the 6 months until we get our larger tax check. Next slide. And you've seen this slide. This was presented to you back in October of 2020 when we were planning out how we were going to pay for the secondary workload. And the first thing on the list was to pass a bond, which we successfully did in January. And you saw the bond projects being presented there tonight. So a lot of those large items that we were paying for out of capital, we no longer have to because we can take those out of the bond money. Next slide, Terry. So that gives us some of the resources in our capital outlay to pay for the custodial salaries out of the operating funds. So custodials will slide over in 21-22, and then the second half will be 22-23. Okay? And then we'll be able to add those 61 teachers over the next 2 years to address strategy 3.2.2. Next slide. And then one of the other things that came out of the planning for that strategy was board policy DBB. It basically just put in some good business practice for the board and the school district to follow. The highlighted section refers to the capital outlay fund, where we said we would limit or cap the amount of salary and benefits that we would pay for out of the capital outlay to 25% of tax revenues. So that little chart there shows you that that we're at about 19% for next year, and then 2 years out would take us to the 25%. That'll get us the workload plan accomplished and put in place. Next slide. Two of the other, moving on away from capital outlay, now I'm going to move into bond proceeds and bond debt. So the bond and interest fund is specifically local taxes to pay off our bond debt, that is the general obligation bonds that are 20 years terms. So I just wanted to point out this is the debt that exists today. It's not going to look that way when I bring it back to you in July, because we're going to sell some bonds and we're going to refund some bonds, and it's going to totally look different, but the numbers will amazingly just end up probably very similar to this. Okay? That's because we got David Arterberry, who does a great job of planning for us. So they'll look very similar to this, but different. Special assessment is another local tax that is pays for our Johnson County wastewater and any easement that the county needs to do on our property, and we get to do a local tax to collect those monies for that. Next slide, Terry. This is our current bond debt schedule, and again, this is our current debt as it is today. Our projected mill levy is going to be about 7.434. We have 3 series outstanding, and as was presented to in March and at the Finance and Facilities Committee, we'll bring back the plan to do 2 issuances, 2021A and 2021B, that will restructure this debt. But again, it'll look very similar when it's all said and done. Next slide. This slide you'll probably see for the next 5-6 years. What will track our bond proceeds that we're spending down our projects. Obviously, you can see we got it all remaining because we really haven't issued any. We don't have any money yet. So a little premature, I know, but that's the plan. We'll do 132.1 million in May, and then 2 to 3 years we'll do the second half of 132.1 million. That's the plan to cover the bond projects. Next slide. And then we have 2 funds remaining for what we call the flow-through. And we call them flow-through because we collect it and then we turn around and give it to the state. The cost of living helps us in our general state aid formula, so it's part of the school finance formula. We can do a local tax. We collect it here, and then we send it back to the state in May. Capers, that's the state gives us that money, and then they take it right back, and that represents our share of the Capers amount that goes into the big Capers pool. Okay. Then the last group of funds are our self-supported funds. We call them that because they're all driven by a separate revenue stream. Either it's a fee, or it's a local tax, or it's gifts and grants, but it doesn't come out of the operating funds. So we have a handful of them here, and I'll touch on a few of them. The eSchool program has been around for a while. That takes care of our virtual online classes that go through Edgenuity. So that's a tuition-based program, so they pay those fees, and that's how we manage the cost for that program. Touched a little bit on food service, how we think we're going to break even this year. It shows that the fund balance is going down considerably, but that's common. That's the way we always budget that, because we want to make sure that we have enough budget authority to cover any food increases that happen during the year. We hope that doesn't happen, but if they spike or for some reason we have that authority to go buy that food in a timely fashion. And the other thing, the food service always has trouble filling positions, so we have vacancies in the positions there. So we won't spend 13.2 million. It'll be more like 12 million probably when it's all said and done. And again, the 11.7 million would represent food or federal dollars reimbursed at the summer lunch program, plus the a la carte that they have going on at the high school. So they still charge for that. So that's the food service. Summer school, we'll be having summer school this year. So this fund represents summer enrichment and summer academy. Again, it's budget a little higher than what they typically will spend. They'll come in probably around $500,000 in what they spend, but we do have that authority to spend that over the summertime. Special liability is a local tax that we collect, and that covers any liability claims that the district might have to cover any cost for. Student materials is the what am I trying to say? Student fees, course fees, sorry. That's what I was looking for, course fees. So any course fees for art, wood shop, they go into this fund. It stays at the school gets to spend it on those classes. This is not, we set a budget, but it's not a budgeted fund for the State Department. So we put the whole budget out there if they want to spend it. As you can tell, they usually stay right around $430,000 for their beginning and ending fund balance. So they never spend more than what they bring in. The textbook rental fund is to handle our textbook purchases. And we kind of think of the old hard, just the textbook, but it's a lot of your digital textbooks that you have subscriptions that you can log into. We charge $80 per student for secondary students, and we do not have a textbook fee for anybody at the elementary or pre-K level. That generates about $900,000 a year in textbook costs. One of the big adoptions for next year is elementary ELA, which is a very large one. That is the plan to purchase that for next school year. The health reserve fund is what we use to pay for the health clinic, so it runs through this fund. So that's always going to, expenditures are always going to equal revenue because basically we're just reimbursing those costs to pay for that health clinic. Gifts, grants, donation, self-explanatory. That's any gifts that are given to the district, we run them through that fund. And so those are kind of the self-supported funds. We'll move on. And then I wanted to just show you this graph on our mill levy. You might have seen this before. Our mill levy stays very consistent. We're around the total of about 52 to 53 mills over the past 5-6 years. We anticipate it dropping just about 0.67%, 0.352, which is about $8 a year for somebody in a $200,000 house. So that's our initial estimate. We'll see when our final numbers come in. And last slide. And then I wanted to go through a little bit of the budget timeline for you. So tonight is our workshop. May 17th, we'll talk about operating funds. And then Stuart mentioned the House Bill 2104. I think it was dubbed the revenue neutral bill. And it passed. So what it added was, by July 20th, we have to notify the county if we are going to take the additional revenue. So the county is responsible for calculating a revenue neutral number. They'll send it to us in June. If we don't have to decide if we're going to use it all, but if we intend to use it, then we tell them, yes, we are. The county has to send out a notice to the taxpayers. They don't have to do it this year. It was pushed off 1 year, so next year they would have to do that. So they send it out to the taxpayers and say, hey, here's your revenue neutral number. Shawnee Mission intends to tap into that. So by July 20th, we have to do that. Again, we're back to approval of the publication at a board meeting July 26th. This is to put it into the Kansas City Star. We're going to have a hearing, and then they changed it so you cannot have your hearing before August 10th. So we always used to have our hearing on August, that first board meeting in August. We will not be able to. So we'll have our hearing on August 23rd and then submit the budget to the county by September 20th. So just a couple wrinkles in our timeline, but it still should work just fine for us. And that was my last slide. So went pretty quick on that. So I'll stand for any questions.
I know Dr. Atha had provided Mary and I with the update that the policy with regards to protecting the operational balances so that we don't go over what would be prudent for the district had been picked up by some other school districts and that they were looking at implementing this other places at the agenda review meeting. Okay. maybe Dr. Atha doesn't recall that. Dr. Fulton, do you recall? But I wanted the other board members to get access to that information as well, that there was interest in this policy, that it provides protections with regards to using those capital dollars when you're covering salaries with them.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if our work spurred that on or not, but there certainly is a interest in developing a kind of model policy around having guidance on exactly what percent of balances you should have, and as we did also with capital outlay, because it helps so much with the planning process and ensures that you're being fiscally responsible with the dollars that you receive from the state as well as local sources. And I don't know if any other team member would like to add to that or not.
Certainly, this strategy that's being implemented and the policy that's been passed by the board has enabled us to reduce teacher workload at the secondary level. Without this mechanism, it would have been difficult for us to do this and sustain it over time. And it really does no good to reduce teacher workload and then in 2 or 3 years or 4 years, bring it back. So I really applaud the board and I think this is creative. I think it's something that others will emulate throughout the state. And the benefit is that over the next 2 years, our teachers will be teaching a 5 instead of a 6, and give them more time to plan, more time to collaborate, more time to work directly one-on-one with children.
And it may also help us potentially to sustain a positive bond rating as well.
Yeah, it definitely does. I don't know, Russ, would you like to go into that a little bit? Having a solid fiscal house matters.
Yeah,
when they begin to look at your bond rating.
Yeah, we just had our bond rating call last week. We thought it went really well. The funds, they look at capital outlay fund and they look at your bond and interest fund, but they also look at the operating fund when they're analyzing what rating we're going to have and how financially stable we are. And one of the things that the Moody's analysts ended the call with was that they changed their method, and it seemed like they put a little more emphasis on the operating fund balance versus your revenue. Because one of the things in Kansas is we're very we don't have much local control to control our own revenue base. So that's always been a hindrance when they come to analyze school districts in the state of Kansas. There's not that flexibility to control your local revenue. So yeah.
Yeah, so that, I think one of the things that really stood out in that conversation was the fact that we did have a board policy on both capital and operating, maintaining certain balances. Along with that, have balanced our budget, to be honest with you, that we haven't been involved in deficit spending, and that played well. We'll see how it ends up with our impacting our bond rating, but those are the sorts of things that make a difference. And as you manage the finances of the district.
Well, and I know that our board members understand why it's so important to keep the high bond rating, but if one of you could just give like a brief, 2-sentence recap of why it's important for us to maintain the high bond rating so we can maximize those resources.
Mr. Knapp?
It would be very similar to you going out and getting your mortgage for your house. So the better our analysis, the better our rating, the better the debt that we're going to be able to market out on the open market. Our bond coupon percents will be lower. We pay less debt. Taxpayers pay less back via the taxes.
Thank you. I'm going to look to my other board members to see if there are follow-up questions. Dr. Sinclair?
On the bill, the state bill that is now regulating municipal tax law, the HB 2104, does that require an active board vote? So do we have to, I was thinking, for some reason I was thinking that we would have to actually take a vote on that as a board, or is that an administrative decision? Do we know that by July 20?
I do not know. That's a good question.
That is a good question. We have to research that
I
one.
know, just looking over at Stuart.
still here.
He knows.
I stuck around for the budget discussion because I know it's always important. Yes, you are required to have a vote. That's the whole point of having this process in place. And as we always try to describe to people, we do that already in a regular budget hearing. So I don't think you have to do anything different than you, other than voting to approve a budget. But it's just connected into that chain of events. So after you have that hearing on, I guess it would be August 23rd, then at some meeting before you submit that budget. And originally the way the bill was written, you had to take the vote at the same night you had the hearing. And people thought, no, that doesn't make much sense. So at some point before it's submitted to the county on the 20th, you would have to have a meeting where you already do, which is vote to approve your budget, or not.
Okay. So the September 20 date, or whatever that date is that we officially adopt the budget, is sufficient timing. It doesn't have to be by like that July 20th date when we report to, when Mr. Knapp has to report to the
It
county.
essentially builds in an enhanced process like you're having tonight. A
Okay.
budget hearing where you would take public comment and those kind of things, and then
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Guy?
On page 7, or slide 7, I just want to confirm the Apple trade-in has a 0 value, and I assume that's just because in our refresh schedule, we're not refreshing any devices, and so we don't have any to trade in. Is that why that's a 0?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I'm not seeing any further hands. Thank you very much, Mr. Knapp. It's
Thank you.
appreciated. Okay, moving on to the approval of our consent items. Unless there's a request from a board member to remove any of the consent items, I will seek a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Move for approval?
Thank you, Mr. Stratton. Is there a second?
Second, Goodburn.
Thank you, Ms. Goodburn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Moving on to our action items, I'll try to do these quick. 7.1, approval of the Kansas City audiovisual for the purchase and installation of presentation displays, so fancy way of saying TVs there, at Shawnee Mission Northwest, Shawnee Mission North, and Indian Woods Middle School. I'll get a motion in a second, and then if you have anything to comment on that, Dr. Fulton, before we vote, we'll do that then. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved, Hembry.
Thank you, Ms. Hembry. Is there a second?
Second, Borgman.
Thank you, Ms. Borkman. Do you have any comments for us on this one, Dr. Fulton?
This is just part of planned improvements for our audiovisual presentations in classrooms.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Item 7.2, approval of the contractor for the theatrical audiovisual upgrades at Shawnee Mission East, Shawnee Mission Northwest, Shawnee Mission West, and Indian Hills Middle School. I'll get the motion in the second, and then we'll get a comment.
Move approval,
Goodburn.
Sinclair.
Oh, that was...
Or second.
Okay,
Oh, sorry.
I'll take Dr. Sinclair for the motion and Ms. Goodburn for the second. And Dr. Fulton, do you have a comment on this one?
Just this capital funded project is going to help our theater program, and that's a good thing.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Item 7.3, approval for administrative workstation refresh. I'll get a motion for approval.
So moved, Hembry.
Thank you, Ms. Hembry. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stratton. Dr. Fulton, do you have a comment for us?
One thing to note here is that this includes desktop units, but also includes laptops to provide flexibility for employees, and this is part of our normal refresh cycle.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Item 7.4, the middle school network switch refresh. Get a motion for approval.
So moved, Borgman.
Thank you, Ms. Borgman. Is there a second?
Goodburn. Oops, sorry, Hembry. Sorry, Jessica.
Thank you for your support, Ms. Hembry. Dr. Fulton, do you have a comment for us on this one?
It's one of the more exciting purchases that we make when it comes to secure routed access, but essential to keep our network working, so.
Excellent. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Hearing none opposed. Well, I guess I didn't ask. Are there any opposed? No, I'm hearing none opposed. It passes unanimously. Item 7.5, approval of a proclamation for National School Library Month. We're going to have Ms. Goodburn provide us with a reading of the proclamation, and then I'll get a motion in a second and we'll vote.
This is a proclamation for National School Library Month, April of 2021. Whereas the Shawnee Mission School Library Program is to ensure that students and staff are effective users of ideas and information, and whereas the school librarian's role is to provide the leadership and expertise necessary to ensure that the library program is an integral part of the instructional program of the school, and whereas the Board of Education has entrusted the school librarian in each school to teach the skills of locating and using information through traditional resources and new technologies, to provide literature appreciation activities, and to guide and encourage content and recreational reading to every student. And whereas lifelong learning begins and is systematically developed through the school library curriculum of the elementary and secondary schools, and whereas the school library program contributes to the individual growth and development of all students, while fostering both excellence and equity in education, and whereas the school librarians of Shawnee Mission Schools have dedicated themselves to work for quality library programs for all students, now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of Shawnee Mission Schools does hereby proclaim April 2021 as School Library Month in all Shawnee Mission Schools, and calls upon school administrators, teachers, students, and patrons of the Shawnee Mission School District to recognize and support this action and to participate throughout the month of April in the celebration of School Library Month.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
I move approval. Sinclair?
Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. Is there a second?
Second, Guy.
Thank you, Reverend Guy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. And thank you for the reading, Ms. Goodburn. Item 7.6, the approval and adoption of the purchase of the social studies curriculum, K through 12. We will get a motion in a second, but there is a small presentation on this and opportunity for discussion. So I will, I'll seek the motion in the second, and then we'll have everyone speak. Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval. Sinclair?
Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. Is there a second?
Goodburn, second.
Thank you, Ms. Goodburn. And I will turn it over to you, Dr. Fulton, and Dr. Hubbard and her team.
Right, great. Thank you very much. You do have in front of you both the content related to this action item, but also a brief presentation, which we won't go through tonight, but we do have a group here to share some insight with you about the process. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hubbard to take it from there.
Thank you, Dr. Fulton. So while there were a couple items on the consent agenda, we also have two tonight. This one in regards to social studies K-12 and the resources to support the written curriculum. And then the next one will be K-6 music. So it's always exciting to add the learning aspect after following all the things that we've had. So I just want to say thank you real quickly to the leaders, Christopher Villarreal and Kristen Zook, who couldn't be here tonight, and then Dr. Bill Thomas, who will be following this group for their leadership. And then for all the teachers that followed through with this process. I know it takes a lot of time out of the classroom and a lot of time of their own time just supporting the process. So just a special thank you for all of you and for being here tonight, and for those of that are watching on live stream. So I will turn it over to Christopher Villarreal just to give a brief summary of the process.
There's one on the back.
On the stem.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Villarreal, and as Dr. Hubbard shared with you, I am the secondary curriculum coordinator responsible for social studies, and Krista Carson couldn't be here with us this evening, but she's the elementary coordinator for social studies, and we worked throughout most of this academic year on the process of identifying resources for our K-12 social studies classes, and that process included developing evaluation criteria, previewing and evaluating resources, doing training with our teacher teams, and then ultimately piloting the top 2 resources for each course. So we have some of the representatives from our teacher teams here with us this evening, and so I wanted to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then if you have any questions about the teacher perspective or student perspective through this process, or any general questions about the process, we'd be happy to answer them for you. So we'll start here on my left.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Annalisa Gardner, and I teach social studies at Horizons High School.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Carnahan, and I'm a 7th grade social studies teacher at Indian Woods Middle School.
Hi, I'm Emily Taggart, and I teach kindergarten at Comanche Elementary.
Hi, I'm Paige Moxness, and I teach 5th grade at Christa McAuliffe Elementary.
And like I said, this is a small representative of the total group of teachers that worked through this process with us. And now, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
I'll turn to board members to see if anyone has some questions. Ms. Embry?
I was just going to ask, I think we recently made some changes to like the mascots in Shawnee Mission, and part of the conversation around that was not just about mascots, but also whether our curriculum did an accurate job of portraying kind of the lived experience of Native Americans and other kind of historically marginalized populations in our countries whose stories haven't been told. So I'm wondering how you guys factored that in, and I know there's sort of developmental appropriateness and curriculum standards that have to be hit and all that, but if you could talk a little bit about how we make sure that we're providing a pretty accurate description of our country's history.
Yes, thank you for that question. When we started developing the evaluation criteria for resources, we wanted to make sure that we included Dr. Tyrone Bates, our our coordinator for diversity, equity, and inclusion, in that conversation, because we had a section of the evaluation tool that was dedicated specifically to diversity, equity, and inclusion and addressed the need for representation of marginalized populations in society. And so our teachers took care to look for that as they previewed resources. And even at the end of the process again, we went back to that particular section of the evaluation criteria to make sure that the ones that we were putting forth in front of you today were meeting the needs of our students and making sure that our students were represented along with historically marginalized populations. And part of that, the process of instruction will come as we work through the curriculum mapping process with our new resources. So we are lucky to have been able to start that with 7th and 8th grade this year, and then we'll do a little bit of work this summer, but the bulk of that work will happen over next academic year.
Ms. Borgman?
Thank you guys so much for coming tonight. It's nice to see you all, and I wish I'm smiling behind this mask. So it's good to see some familiar faces, Ms. Moxness. I'm just excited to hear your thoughts on this new curriculum, what makes you excited about it, how you think kids are going to respond to it. I mean, just your general thoughts on this would be really great.
So I was lucky enough to pilot the materials with my classes, and we were piloting both for geography and Kansas history. And we're moving from a quarter long of each of those to semester long to match the state guidelines. And I think the geography resource that we've chosen is just heads above what we've been using. It's much more interactive. The students were excited to be in the program. It has a lot of mapping skills already built into it. And I just think it's going to be a really good tool for us for that course.
I would also say working at Horizons, and I work with a different population of students, I really took that advantage to ask their input. They also, at the secondary level, had to fill out a feedback form that went to the district, but on my form, I also took into consideration what they told me because I wasn't seeing their feedback directly. And I've gotten to actually continue with some of the resources to practice because we started a new semester this fourth quarter, so I have new students to try to see what they think. And before coming to this meeting, I did ask them, what do you think about this resource? And the biggest thing was they thought it was really easy to use. The textbook that they had synced really well with the online digital resources. And so I have some students using print copies while I have others that are on the digital thing. So that it really makes it, it gives them diverse options. So.
And a small comment to piggyback on what Annalisa said. She noted that students completed evaluations at the secondary level, and so that was in our 7 through 12, where they completed the evaluation forms, and we collected around 2,300 evaluations from students for grade 7 through 12.
I know that we are excited to get some new materials at the elementary level because it's been a while since we've had something that really encompasses everything that we need, and just a great program. I know I was piloting my portion online to students, to kindergartners, so we didn't use a whole lot of the digital portion of it just because I didn't want to have to teach a whole new thing to them, but they were so excited about what we were going to talk about every day, and I love there's plenty of diversity in there, and they were seeing children like themselves in our books.
I teach 5th grade, and we departmentalize at McCullough, so I teach 3 sections of social studies, which has been fun to really dive into the curriculum. And we, at the elementary level, piloted 4 different programs from winter until now, so it's been very busy, very fast-paced. But the students have been really great about giving feedback, and again, I can hear it in 3 different sections, and we feel very excited about having a new program, but also about this program. It combines inquiry and has excellent primary sources, which is a big part of how I like to teach social studies, and addresses some of your questions too, Ms. Hembry. So we are thrilled to get new materials into our hands and also online, so thank you for letting us do that. We're excited.
Dr. Sinclair?
I think you all have answered some of my questions just about how you've been able to pull in feedback. It's fantastic to hear that. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to point out the importance of just the state restoring funding to our school finance formula, allowing us to refresh and restore our curriculum for our students and for our teachers. So I think it's just really important to call that out and make the point that we need our state funds to come back to where they were, and to move forward with our ESSER funds, to those federal relief dollars, to really wrap the kids in and engage them in the process. Anyways, just wanted to comment. Thank you.
Not seeing any more comments or questions at this time, and that seems like a good one to end it on. So all those in favor, thank you very much for being here tonight.
Yeah,
it's really appreciated.
you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? No, there are not. All right, unanimously, thank you. Item 7.7, this is our last one for the evening. Approval of the purchase of Quaver Ed music curriculum. I think we can do something very similar. I'll get a motion in a second, and then we'll hear from our guests.
So moved.
Thank you, Reverend Guy. Is there a second?
Second, Borgman.
Thank you, Ms. Borgman. Everyone's really excited to
We are.
motion and second these.
And Dr. Hubbard's going to do the introductions.
And again, I would just turn it over to Dr. Bill Thomas, and I would thank the 3 of you for joining us. Much appreciated.
Good evening again, everybody. Good to see you again under different circumstances tonight, so that's kind of fun. Yes. Excited to be here with this team of great educators. I got to work with them very closely. There's actually 7 on the team, kind of representing all the areas. Not as big of a team as what Christopher had to deal with because of all the different text books and just the various curriculum he deals with. These are just strictly elementary music educators. They've been using the same resource basically for 20 plus years. Not that it wasn't refreshed at some point, but the same textbook. And so when this time came about, they were very excited because during COVID, there was no digital resource to be had. What they did have in their hand were CDs. And with these computers, there's not a CD drive anywhere to be had. So that created some real challenges for them. And so when they heard we got to go through this process, they were very excited at the potential for what could be. If you got a chance to look at the presentation at all, that one of the things they were looking for not only was the strong digital content, but something that was going to be very engaging for the students. When they looked back at what they had and we brought in the other resources, just a lot of the things just looked very dated. In the textbooks that they used, some of the graphics hadn't really changed, and some of the music that they used hadn't changed. And so when we started comparing things, they found that Quaver we found Music Play that was a digital resource primarily, and the music was much more engaging. The accompaniments were much more realistic. They weren't the MIDI, just canned music. It sounded like real orchestral recordings or jazz recordings or something that they got to sing and perform with. And with the Quaver, it's also updated a minimum of 4 times a year because it is a digital content. And this year during COVID, sometimes it was a couple of times a month as they were addressing what was happening in the real world, and they heard from the teachers. As we had talked, I had heard from the rest of the team that when they had questions, they'd pick up the phone and call the help desk, and Quaver was all over that and wanted to be there. They wanted to know what the weaknesses were so they could address that, and they were very impressed by that piece of their component. If you look through the McGraw-Hill, Silver Burdette were the old school textbook-based, still using, they had some digital resources, but it was basically a regurgitation of what they'd had in the books. The Music Play is a relatively new one that did have a lot of digital content, but again, as it's fairly new, it wasn't as robust as the Quaver resource was. So they just were heads and tails above anything else that they looked at, and they were very impressed. When we had our meetings and we were looking through things, comparing things, it was amazing how that just always came to the top. There was really no discussion to be had when I'd pull the question together and say, what do you think? And it was hands down. There really wasn't much of a discussion there. So very excited that there wasn't a tug of war. It was, this is it. This is where we need to be heading. So with that, team members, if there's anything you guys want to add, you're the folks in the trenches. You're live. I'm on. No, you were.
I was. There we go.
There.
Hi, I'm Nina Williams. I'm the music teacher, choral director at East Antioch, and I spend B week at Lenexa Hills. And I've been teaching a really long time. This is my 28th year in Shawnee Mission, and we started with the old LPs. And I have to say, this year has been really difficult because the spotlight on music that we had, even though we had CDs and some of us had MP3s, really difficult to meet our remote classes at a digital level. And so as soon as we started with Quaver, it was wonderful because they were engaging lessons. When my first graders are lining up and I hear them singing the song that I was playing when they, music has a steady beat, I know that it's something that they're going to remember. So that was what I wanted. I wanted something that would work well with Canvas, that I could, have a digital platform, and I liked when they said they would continue to upgrade for us. We're buying something that we're going to invest years in. We don't want to be using a 2021 resource that's the same thing in 2030. So that's why I voted for it.
Nope. Up higher. Up. There you go.
Good evening. My name is Beth Nickel, and I am the classroom music teacher at Shawnee Elementary. I am very excited for the adoption of Quaver for a couple of reasons. One of the biggest factors as we were looking at these curriculum materials was making sure that they were inclusive of our students across the board, our entire student population. And as we reviewed all of the materials, Quaver, hands down, came through as the most inclusive. In addition, they are continuously checking their materials to make sure that they are inclusive and they are not further marginalizing students of previously marginalized populations. And if they do find material that creates that situation, they will pull it, they will write an explanation and provide suggestions for replacement. So that was very enticing to me. The other component that I really enjoy is the professional development that is offered. They have over 50 hours of on-demand professional development through the platform. And in addition, through our adoption, they are providing us with 2 days of in-person professional development to learn this system, which is absolutely fantastic for our staff.
I'm Cynthia Connor from Prairie Elementary, and I was very impressed that within each lesson there are so many connections to other things. The students can pull up a keyboard, a virtual keyboard, or other virtual instruments right there. They can pull up Google Earth. They can pull up so many different resources to make connections to other areas. So that was one thing, and along with what my colleagues said. So thank you.
I'll look to see if there are any specific questions, or, okay, go ahead, Ms. Borgman.
Thank you, ladies, so much for being here, and gentlemen. We are so appreciative of all you do for our kids, especially in this COVID year. I mean, talk about a challenging special to teach, but we are grateful for you. Talk to us about the process of how you, it sounds like the benefits of Quaver are just obvious, but as we kind of go through this process of really trying to understand how you choose things, what did you like about the process? Are there things that we can learn from?
I'll kick off that one of the first meetings we had, we sat down and just talked about what are the things right now that you like about what you have, and what are the weaknesses? What do we need to address? And from there went into, what would a great resource have for you? What are we missing? How can we do it better? And that's where we came to the accompaniments need to be quality, need to sound like real instruments that the kids would see and hear. Just looking, comparing, talking through those entities for all the various things. Some of the resources we got were great for teacher study, but weren't appropriate for student use in the classroom. And so we kind of weeded some of those out early on. In most of those situations, we shared ideas back and forth, narrowed it down, started with 12 or 14 different resources, narrowed it down from those discussions of what's important, what's not, talking with their colleagues, say, what do you think about this or that? And then began the process of, okay, we've got these 4, now let's start putting them into place. And they each would take a resource and really dig into it, look through it, try some things out, and then come back and meet, and then kind of swap resources and do it all again. So they had some real world experiences with it to see how the students engaged, how maybe they didn't connect with it, and how it would interact with Canvas, could interact. I don't think anybody did a lot of that. We found out that it could, but it could be used with their iPads. So just a lot of discussion along with small trials from small groups of folks throughout the process. So.
I just want to add one thing. As an elementary music teacher, I am the first line of defense for music for children. They either hate music or they love music, and it's all on me. If they don't like me, they don't like music because they associate me with music. So the days of poster board are gone. We have a very sophisticated clientele. Our children are sophisticated. They're used to being entertained. And so I am the entertainer. And so I've got to trick them into knowing that they're learning something, but I'm just making it fun. And so the thing I liked about Quaver, I can assign something. I can take my lesson, I can assign it to the students. I created student accounts for them. So if there was something they especially liked, if they liked that steady beat song, I could send it to their iPad so they could sing it later if they wanted to. But I really wanted something that would really engage the students because it's me. Music is on me. So I have to make it fun and engaging. And this resource was the best one we had.
I'll just add to that. When we were looking at the criteria, we had a list of probably 30 things we were looking for, and we decided very quickly that there were some things at the top of the list that we needed to make sure that we included, inclusivity being one of them. The fact that we teach 6th grade at the elementary level is another. A lot of materials for music education out there only run K through 5. So that was something very quickly, if they could not provide us with quality 6th grade materials that students would be engaged in, that was something that was critical for our team.
And our selection team, we've been working together for 5 years, I think, as a curriculum cadre turning up and over the curriculum. So we really feel like we knew the curriculum, and this resource really addressed everything that we were looking for our curriculum.
I just want to say one more thing. We have some newbie music teachers in our district, and that is wonderful. We have a whole spectrum that are going to be joining our cadre. I feel very, very strongly about that because I'm on the downhill slide. We need the young ones to come in, but they don't have the experience that we have. They haven't worked with the curriculum that we've worked with. So in Quaver, you can search up any standard. You can find every lesson that meets that standard. That is a must for these new teachers because they just, I'm mentoring a first-year teacher and overwhelmed. I mean, just take the COVID part. Overwhelmed. They have to have a resource where they can really just dig into it and say, I've got to find a lesson on this. And there it is.
I'm tempted to just go ahead and call the vote unless somebody really has another burning question. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? No, there are not. Thank you very much for everything. That was the last item on our agenda. Seems like it was a really long meeting. It wasn't too bad, I guess. We'll get. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for staying. So we'll get some board comments from board members. We'll start with you, Ms. Embry, and work our way around.
Nothing from me.
Thank you. Ms. Goodburn?
I do have something tonight. On our last agenda, we had a retirement from Richard Kramer. And he's been a long time staff member in Shawnee Mission, so I wanted to spend a little bit of time tonight, just kind of if you don't know him, or maybe tonight you're going to find out a little bit about him. So I just wanted to acknowledge the career of Richard Kramer, who spent 43 years in this district, coaching, teaching at various levels. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, just so spend some time with him. So 43 years, 9 years at Highlands. He traveled to several buildings during that. He taught physical education with adaptive PE classes at North. He coached. He was an assistant coach of sophomore girls. Actually, and I have a story to tell about this because I was at South when he was the sophomore girls basketball coach. And my friend Ann was on his team. Isn't that funny? He was at South, that was at South, assistant boys baseball at East, head wrestling coach at East, and they were the regional champions back in '85. And then he spent 10 years at Shawnee Mission East teaching health education, physical education. He was an administrative intern. And I was told not to forget this one because he coached he was the head baseball coach at East when they were the state champions in 1995. And I know in his office there was a picture, I remember seeing a picture of that team, so it was something he was very proud of. Head girls golf coach as well when he was there, Sunflower League champions in '97. Then he moved on, 10 years associate principal at Shawnee Mission West, 9 years as the principal of Shawnee Mission North, and 5 years as our director of athletics and activities here in the district. So 43 years. He also went to Shawnee Mission South back in the day for high school, and then went on to KU. So I share that with him, Shawnee Mission South and Jayhawks. And then he was really the reason why I'm on this board. He was a friend. My kids went through Shawnee Mission North, and he encouraged me to run for the board. So I have a few comments. I reached out today to a few of the folks that have worked with him, worked alongside him over these 43 years. One of his associates at North during his tenure said today he's a friend, a mentor, and a colleague. And these are just some words that she used to describe him. He has high expectations for students and staff. He speaks the truth, honest and direct. He wants the best for all people, tries to find a win-win in a situation. He walks the talk. He believes in you, he will support you and assist you, and loves the Shawnee Mission School District community, obviously 43 years service. Here's the words used to describe him by a former board member: integrity, first thing out of her mouth. authentic, first in, last out mentality, and a servant leader. Then I have my own 2 students who happen to be home this afternoon. So I said, tell me some words about Mr. Kramer. Knowledgeable. The tribe tenets, actually both students could say all of them: trust, respect, integrity, belief, and excellence. They could recite it. He was positive. 212, and if you don't know what 212 is, most of you probably do, but it was a big mantra in his school to create that culture of going that extra degree in everything that you do. I can still say to my kids, if they are not doing exactly the best job on something, say 212, and they know what I'm talking about. And sorry, Mr. Kramer, I'm going to mention the salmon pants. Because it is another attribute of Mr. Kramer, though, of leaning into the humor of high school age students, that he wore pants that were not completely red color. They were more of a salmon color, and he became known for those salmon pants. So, and then words by me, positive. I can remember meetings at leaving that building at dark 30. He would have his backpack on, going to his car, and the spring in that man's step when he'd be going to his car late in the evening. He's loyal, obviously, stints in the district. Built a positive culture, students first, high expectations, 212 attitude. Encouragement of me to run, and I look forward to running into him. Our paths always seem to cross at the oddest places, like at the Chiefs games. Of all this, we have tickets to the Chiefs games. There's 2 seats next to us that are vacant, and anybody can buy those tickets. Would you know that Kramer and his wife sat next to us at the championship game when they won the AFC championship? Out of 80,000 places he could have sat, right? That was fun, though. But on behalf of myself, I just wanted to acknowledge that I wasn't prepared at the last board meeting, but I was prepared this time. And I really look forward to being at the May 5th retirement and service pin ceremony. I hope that he's there for it, and that I can celebrate with him and many others then. So anyway, that's all. Yes, I will give that. And I want to say, enjoy your retirement. I'm sure you will, and I'm sure that we'll run into you. But anyway, thank you all.
I don't want to follow that with anything. But I do have just a quick comment. I sponsored the foundation gave you an opportunity to honor seniors in the upcoming event on Thursday evening, and it turns out that Glory Opie is graduating this year from North, and she served on the strategic planning committee with us and helped shape the strategic plan, and she came and spoke to provide support for, updating the mascot changes, and she's on the PEP club at North, so she brings a lot of the school spirit and excitement and engagement to the table, and she has been offered and accepted and is going to Stanford. And so I was really excited to hear all of this, and I'm really excited for her as she moves on into her next adventure, and I know that she's just one of our seniors this year, and I know they all have these really, truly amazing stories, and also everything they've overcome with COVID. So I am looking forward to the event on Thursday evening, and thank you for the tribute to Coach Kramer. He has been loved and respected in the North community for a long time, and the East community, and the South community. I guess he hit everywhere, and the West, yeah, he kind of hit everywhere. So that it was very moving. I appreciate it. Thank you. Dr. Sinclair?
I guess I just want to say I appreciate all the educators who join us at this table from meeting to meeting and help inform our votes, but all the work they do to bring the recommendations to us. I wanted to thank the nurses and the COVID team for bringing, was it 600 students who had been vaccinated? So bringing vaccinations to our students. I know I've found a profound sense of relief being vaccinated, so I appreciate that. And I wanted to welcome our new staff, who we're bringing in new staff, each meeting, but particularly to Jason Pires, who will be joining the Shawnee Mission East community. So thank you.
No comments tonight. Thanks.
I just want to say thank you. I am aware that the high schools had proms or are having proms. I don't know if they've all happened yet or not, but I was just amazed reading about all the prom protocols and trying to keep kids safe, but still trying to give them this opportunity. And of course, last year, the students didn't have that opportunity with COVID. And I just want to acknowledge that there are a lot of adults who put in a lot of time to try to give the students some kind of prom this year. And I know it's not probably the prom they wanted to be able to do everything that previous classes have done, but I just want to acknowledge that we have fantastic educators, administrators, parents, community leaders working together to help our students have the most normal kind of year they can have, even in the midst of a pandemic. So I hope the students have enjoyed their prom experiences, and thanks to everybody who's worked so hard to make that happen for them.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting, Ms. Goodburn, that you should bring up Coach Kramer tonight. I was going through some old board notes, and I wrote down one of his quotes, and it was something to the effect of, in Shawnee Mission, we don't meet the bar, we set the bar. And that's just something that will always stick with me. So thank you for that beautiful tribute to him. May 4th is Teachers' Day. May 6th is Nurses' Day. So obviously that's next week. Thank you, teachers and nurses, for all you do. You are unsung heroes. Also, just another little shout out. There was a therapy dog just approved at one of our elementary schools. So many parents and students are so excited about that. It's a rescue dog, and it's really nice to have something like this to feel really good about your school. And so I'm sure that dog will be well loved. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That closes the meeting for the evening. I think our next meeting is scheduled for May 17th, but I've already shut my computer. Is May 17th? Okay. All right. May 17th it is. Thank you.